So for years, when a car manufacturer brings out a model, they normally have different specs, and this ranges anything from a boggo standard spec all the way to a spicy spec. And our little Mira is no exception. This is a slightly spicy spec fitted with the turbocharged engine. But obviously when you're dealing with super fast hatchbacks like this, a turbocharged engine is not enough. You also need a spoiler and side skirts and color-coded bumpers. So on a car like this, you don't really need all that stuff, but it does make it feel a little bit more special than the other models. I mean, that's great. It certainly will look the part with all that stuff on, but there is a problem. And it's prepping all of this. Hi guys, welcome back. We're on the Mira today, and this time we won't be dealing with metal, we're going to be dealing with oodles of plastic. So unfortunately, with the plastics on the Mira, the body kit and the accessories, the years haven't been kind to it. So I've already made a start on the rear spoiler. In a previous video, we did actually repair the plastic down here that was very split. But not only that, I've actually sanded it back just to see what the score was, and the paint just flaked off. Unfortunately, exposed areas like this in the Japanese sun, they do tend to, well, the paint decides to fall off quite quickly. And with the front bumper, yet again, I've started to sand it back just to see what was going on. And I have done a little repair down here. I have actually sanded it back. It's obviously where it's clipped the curb. And there's another one over here as well. Other than that, it does look in quite good shape. Although I will say that both front and rear bumpers have been well used. So I actually haven't started to prep the rear bumper yet. I do need to take the number plate lights out before I do that. But just to give you an idea of just how bad this is, you can see there where it did actually have quite a scuff there, and somebody has cleverly done a really nice blended paint job. I mean, you can hardly see the repair there. So the first thing I need to do is give these parts a good old jet wash. You can see here there's years and years of, well, things living inside the skirts. Yeah, I don't even know what those little bugs are there. But it's the same story inside the rear bumper, the front bumper. So I really need to get rid of all this stuff first. Cool, more of those little creatures. So while those plastic parts are drying, I just want to talk to you about plastics. So cars and motorcycles do use a lot of plastic, and the thing is, it's flexible. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, primers and paints are not flexible. So after keying up the surface and you're ready to apply primer, what I suggest is use a decent quality plastic primer. It's actually designed for the job. So about 10 minutes ago, before I jet washed this front grille, this area here was actually color coded. You can see a bit of paint left over there, and you can also see that, well, the plastic underneath has not been keyed up at all, and the paint's come off with the primer. So this is what's going to happen if you don't do this particular job properly. You've got to make sure that the surface is nice and keyed up, nice and clean before you go on with the primer. Nobody likes flaky paint, do they? So there's actually special materials designed to do the job. In the past, I have used plastic primers on motorcycles and things like wing mirrors, and yeah, the paint does stick on there quite nicely, but I've also used 2K primer. So with a 2K primer, or a 2-pack primer that you spray up the gun, there are special ones for plastic, but in the past I've actually used normal 2K primers and I've not had a problem, providing it's properly keyed up, with the paint flaking off. So what would I recommend? Well, I recommend a plastic primer. What am I going to do? Well, I'm not going to use a plastic primer. So the little Daihatsu has some well-used bumpers and has picked up a lot of scars and marks and scuffs. And areas like this, you can actually get a product which is a flexible filler, like a bumper filler, and you can even use epoxy to fill these in, providing it's an overpaintable product. But in the same breath, in the past I have actually used normal fillers and fiberglasses to repair bumpers in plastic bumpers and pieces of spoiler, etc. And I've not really had that much of a problem. I think the problem lies is when you have larger areas that are more prone to flexing, that the filler's going to crack. So here's the plan. I'm going to sand the bumpers with something like a 240 grit disc. Then what I'll probably do is, a lot of these marks will disappear in the sanding stage. Any little imperfections, I'm actually going to use a standard car filler, and then I'm going to prime them. I've also got some broken bits to sort out, like this little clip here that goes underneath the number plate support on the rear bumper. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to try and glue that on like a Bond, or whether I'm going to plastic weld it. I'll probably go down the plastic weld route first. So some of the areas, like inside here are really difficult to get in there, just to key it up. And the answer was pretty simple. It's just tape a bit of Scotch-Brite to one of my punches and just put it into the drill, and I'm able to really get in there and clean the area up. No problem. So that's all the exterior plastics all prepped up, ready for primer. So we already knew that all these exterior plastics were in really rough shape, and in some areas I've just used a little bit of body filler to just make it a little bit tidier. In other areas I've actually, deep scratches and scars, I've actually put a bit of fiberglass, and in some other areas I've actually used epoxy. So after I'd done all the repairs, I just went over the areas with 320, 240 grit paper, and then in the areas that are really difficult to get to, I used a bit of red Scotch. So that was really quick and simple, but it wasn't. It was extremely time consuming. I mean, just to prep these parts and do the repairs, it's taken me 2 days. 2 days! I do realise that the condition of all these parts is pretty bad, but I had no idea it would actually take so long to actually get these prepped. And even trying to get into those little awkward bits with paper and Scotch and whatever I had just to get it keyed up, it was getting ridiculous. So I've had to bite the bullet and say, that'll kind of do. Let's get all this stuff into primer. Any little imperfections we can sort out at a later date. So that's all the plastic finally in primer. You may notice that there is actually two different colours going on. We've got a grey there and we've got a white there. The white is actually a high build primer, and when I actually ran out of that, I used a standard primer on the rest of these bits here. So what we got is the little infill on the front grille there. There's a little piece of plastic that sits just inside the spoiler, as well as the spoiler itself, the rear bumper. These are the side skirts here, and these are bits of trim that sit on the front wings. We have a bonnet vent. We have two bits of trims that sit down the doors, and we've also got the front bumper. So that actually took a hell of a lot longer than I expected. 2.5, maybe even 3 days just to get those bits of plastic into primer. It really is amazing to think how much of this plastic trim is on this little car. It's pretty much covering the whole car. So now all those parts have a decent coat of primer on. All that's left for me to do is to guide coat it and rub these down ready for paint. Also, now I've got those bits in primer, I can then move ahead on the body of the mirror, which involves blocking down all that primer and then getting that ready for paint too. So the bottom line is, if you do decide to paint the body kit on your car, well, don't. No, I'm just kidding. It does take a lot more time than I thought. I originally thought maybe a day, and then it went into day 2, and now we're pretty much into day 3 in the evening. It took a long time, so just bear that in mind. It's not a 5-minute job. So I've got a lot of stuff to get on with the mirror now. A lot of it does involve just prepping the primer ready for paint. I have been busy doing the parts on this car, and I do apologise that this video is a little bit late. I've also been doing some work on the little bug there. Unfortunately, I have found a bit of hidden rust, and you can check that out in the next episode. I'm going to leave it there for today, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!